drive a school bus, you have one of the most challenging jobs in education. Can you imagine telling a teacher that he or she needs to manage 50 students in a free time situation, keeping everyone in their seat, and doing so while sitting with his or her back to them all and looking at them through a mirror? But bus drivers do this every day and with generally very high rates of success. Still, every driver experiences students and circumstances that present greater challenges, requiring skills beyond that of driving the bus. I'm sure you've experienced the most common problems. Students who don't comply with requests, they refuse to sit down, they continually move into the aisle while the bus is moving, they put their hands and arms out the windows, they use profanity, and they generally engage in behaviors that they know are not allowed. These are the more mild and frequent misbehaviors, but I'm sure you also deal with larger problems. The behaviors that really stick in your memory include students fighting and intense threats of aggression, dangerous behaviors, and even threats and profanity from parents or other adults while on your route. But these problems aren't just problems for you personally. The driver's job is to maintain safety while transporting students, and these problems all impact the safety of students and others. Safety is our main concern. The bus is designed to keep passengers safe only when they are sitting properly in the seat contained in the barrier. If a student is hanging out in the aisleway and an accident occurs, they are more likely to be injured. Not to mention, it causes a delay for students that are getting off the bus, as well as a trip hazard.
Safety, that's the most biggest for me. We really have been dealing with this year, but I do hear and share with the safety committee that a lot of it is, the children just won't sit down, and we can't move the bus or operate a bus while a child is standing in the fighting. When we got a group of kids or 2 or 3 kids that might be fighting, or we got 2 or 3 children that are standing on the bus, we just can't operate a bus like that.
And those are obviously safety issues. According to the law, we need them to sit down to be safely transported. The school bus is the safest transportation for a child to get to school.
The most effective strategy we have in any activity is prevention. Actions we take to minimize the probability of having a problem in the first place. Nothing is a sure thing, but there are things we can do that are proven to decrease problems. Think about this. What if you could observe all of the action taking place on a school bus without anyone except the driver knowing you're there? Using your expertise, you can give the driver helpful tips for maintaining control of the students along the route. But that's not all. Let's say if all the students remain seated and calm, and there are no safety violations and no angry conflict between the driver and students, you win $1 million. What would you like to see the driver doing or not doing to maximize the probability of you winning that $1 million? Clearly, there are no driver actions that absolutely ensure success or that win you $1 million. But there are definitely some things that make a successful outcome more probable, and others that set you up for potential problems. Obviously, when the driver exhibits anger, yelling, and hostility, you've already lost your chance of winning that $1 million. You needed to avoid conflict to win. We know as a fact that escalating anger and hostility from the driver predicts increased and escalating misbehaviors from students, the opposite of what we want. It's not that we shouldn't address misbehavior, we clearly should, but there are ways to do this that are more and less likely to work. Here's a first big idea for winning that $1 million. Remain calm. Remember, you're the adult, and children can't push your buttons. As they escalate, you must get calmer and more clearly reiterate the expectation for calm. Further, all consequences are choices that students make, not you. So, there's no need to threaten consequences. Just remind students of the choices they are making. We'll talk more about consequences later in this module, and again in later modules when we move to talk about some more specific student misbehaviors. The most important part of getting a person to do what we want is to make sure that we have made very clear what it is that we want. In other words, teaching. Very often we assume that students are all aware of the rules and expectations on the bus because they've been on the bus before. We know they know the rules. But as you well know, there are students out there who have had it said to them over and over for years, and still, if you ask them, they'd probably not be able to tell you exactly what the rules are. Students forget, they aren't listening, and they don't understand, even though they nod their head in agreement. It's frustrating for sure, but this is why the issue of instruction is so important. Remember, you're the adult on the bus. You are the teacher. We wouldn't be satisfied with an English teacher that just repeated grammatical rules all the time. We'd want to see that teacher engage students and use examples and provide opportunities for students to respond. The same teaching practices are critical when considering how to make sure students are aware of, understand, and remember the bus rules. Here are some keys to making sure that your teaching of the bus rules and expectations is effective. First, teach all the rules as necessary to maintain everyone's safety. Students will be less likely to break rules when they understand the rationale is for their safety and not for your personal
The
preference.
seats are the safest place for you. If you notice, they're padded, they're soft, they will keep you safe. That's my job. I want to make sure every one of you gets home. So just make sure as we're going today, you stay in your seat, everything will be fine. All right? All right, let's have a great trip.
Second, engage students when you talk about rules. Ask someone to demonstrate, ask questions, and model behavior while asking students to identify what you did right and wrong. All of this helps to keep them attentive during the instruction.
All right, guys, before we get started today, just a real quick question. What if, when the bus was going, I was walking along the sides just like this and it stopped?
You're gonna fly forward.
Exactly, I'd fly forward. That's not safe. That's why we always stay in our seats when the bus is moving. All right, let's have a great trip.
Third, encourage students and provide lots of reminders every day and throughout the ride. The more they hear it, the more they're likely to remember it.
All right, hey guys, before we get started, there are reports of a lot of traffic today, so let's make sure we stay in our seats. It's very important that we stay safe in this trip. All right? All right, let's go.
And finally, post the rules on the bus. Keep it short and only hit upon the big ideas related to safety and respect. Not a rule for every possible misbehavior.
guys.
The rules should serve to help remind students of the expectations.
You're respecting others and you're respecting the bus. Those are our expectations. They're gonna keep you safe and it's gonna make sure our drive is great. All right? All right, let's go.
We're going to talk in much more depth about these practices in the coming 4 modules. But right now, let's go back to that $1 million. Remember, you only win your $1 million if the students follow the rules and there is no angry conflict between the driver and any of the students. There are a couple of other things that you need to consider in order to maximize the chances of winning that cash. First, it's incredibly simplistic, but we have almost 100 years of research that shows in business, in schools, and in life, nothing is more powerful in terms of predicting future positive behavior like finding and acknowledging current positive behavior. At any point in time, if you look out over your bus filled with students, you will see students that are following the rules. You know some students who are always appropriate, and they need to be acknowledged with a simple thanks on a regular basis. But what about the students who frequently misbehave? I'm sure you can picture their faces right now. The fact is, even these students are generally following the rules, most of the time. It's important to take advantage of these times to say thanks or somehow let them know you noticed them. Of course, this won't work every time. Nothing does. But the point here is that recognizing appropriate behavior is a giant predictor for seeing it again. We'll talk about some more formal ways of acknowledging positive behavior in Module 3. But for now, we're just talking about simple acknowledgement, saying thanks, commenting on good behavior, and even giving a smile or other gesture. The final consideration for winning that money is related to effective communication. This means communication with students, with the school, and sometimes even with parents. A frequent and open line of communication generally serves to minimize problems. Again, this is the same with students as it is with other adults. As we've already discussed, communications for both positive and negative behaviors is important, and we'll talk more about that in coming modules. But before we leave this module, let's talk about communicating with people who are hostile, angry, and even aggressive. The number one key when interacting with such people is to remain calm. Don't allow others' emotions to bait you into their hostility or aggression. If confronted with an angry student or parent, your demeanor should be businesslike. Remember, you are a trained professional and you don't allow others to control your emotions. Stay calm and simply repeat legal and policy positions in a matter-of-fact tone. If the situation escalates, you should simply provide a clear direction and reminder of consequences. Here's an example of an appropriate response to an angry adult.
I ain't never watched it, too. I ain't never watched it at all.
I watched the whole season.
I haven't at all.
Which one of these kids on here is messing with my child?
Ma'am, excuse me.
Let me find out which one of these kids is touching my child. One of these kids
Ma'am.
yesterday.
Excuse me, what's going on?
My daughter came home yesterday and told me one of these kids is on this bus with her.
Okay. So what we'll do, we can't talk about this right now, but you can call the compound and we can take care of it from there, okay?
Here's what's not going to happen. Somebody touches my kid and you're going to deal with me right out here. That's what's going to
That's fine, we can
happen.
deal with it over the phone, but I need you to step out the bus. I need to drive this kid to school.
Okay. You're going to make sure, turn around and make sure you watch
Ma'am,
them.
appreciate that, thank you. I need to step out the bus. Thank you, have a nice day, okay?
There's a good chance you've experienced something like this. It's important to realize that we have no control over what people might say or do, but we do have control of our own behavior. And what we do can make the behavior of others more or less likely to escalate. Again, you're the professional, and handling these types of incidents with professionalism as opposed to trying to challenge or argue will always be the best course of action. In the coming modules, we'll go into some of these issues in depth. Module 2 describes how teachers can best engage students positively, and Module 3 describes active supervision while driving a bus. Modules 4 and 5 are focused on using the strategies learned in Modules 1 through 3 as a basis for responding to both mild and intensive misbehaviors. Either as a large group or in smaller groups, discuss what parts of this module you found to be most relevant to you and your driving experience. Think about specific challenges that you deal with and discuss how these general considerations might apply. Consider the extent to which you teach the expectations, engage the students personally, and acknowledge success. You'll have opportunities for similar discussions related to some specific misbehaviors and challenges in later modules.